Hey guys, what's up? So for this one, this is kind of a follow-up video to the last video I had done. This one instead is going to be more focused on how do we use budget tools like highlighters instead of something like this that's a more professional tool. This is a Pilot parallel pen, which is a nib-based pen. So you'll see this has a metal nib on the end of it. And it has an ink reservoir inside that's refillable. But we're going to use these today to kind of show you the difference in lettering and how you can create kind of new type of lettering styles or learn lettering as you go along using simple tools like this that cost almost nothing to ones like this that cost about $10 to $15 a pen. So with the markers, they're usually about a couple bucks for a set of them. So we're also going to use just some simple Crayola markers because Crayola markers are actually quite good at doing lettering. You wouldn't think so, but because the heads are very resilient for being used for kids and that for drawing, they stand up quite well for doing lettering, for adding a lot of pressure and things like that. So all of that said, I'm just going to get started and show you guys a couple of different types of strokes that you will be doing that get you familiar with different types of fonts. So I'm not doing any particular font in any kind of way right now. I'm just going to be doing stuff that's influenced by certain things. So with the Pilot parallel pen here, I'm going to show you with its sharp edge, if I'm doing something like a Gothic letter G, this is going to be Gothic inspired. I'm not doing a specific one, but we do this. So this is very Gothic inspired. This is not something that is specifically a Gothic font or anything. This is just something that I'm making up kind of as I go right now using general Gothic strokes and that. So if we look at something like that, we can replicate this quite well with a Sharpie because the Sharpie also has that kind of flat edge to it. Now it's at an angle, so it's not flat in the sense that it's perpendicular to the page. It's kind of at this 45-ish, like 30 to 45-ish degree. So we're just going to have to hold the pen slightly differently, but we can actually replicate this quite well. Sorry for the creakiness. So I'm just trying to mimic the exact same shape here. So if you look at that, so that's pretty close in the style to this. Now I made it a little bit smaller just because this is a little thinner in size, but you can see this type of lettering is a good lettering to start with. Even though it looks very intricate, it's actually one of the easier ones to begin with because it doesn't require a lot of pressure changes with the pen or marker in this case, because you're actually using the thick and thin sides of the nib on the end to create your thick and thin lines. So you're not using pressure to do that all the time. You can, but a lot of the letters don't require that. So if we did something like a lowercase h or something, you can see I've used this line here to do the thin side. I've used the thick part of it here, and then I do this, right? And again, these are very, very, very straight lines, obviously. Well, straight-ish, let's say, but they're kind of simple in setup. You're not really doing anything pressure-wise. You're just using the same pressure. It's just kind of the motion in which you're using to create these kind of shapes. Now you can get kind of more curved lines and stuff like that with it. So if we want to do the same thing with the H, we do like a, so this is like a different kind of styled H, or we can actually go the other way around. We'll do it, actually let's just do this. Again, like slightly different style, slightly different shape. You can still do things using pressure again. So if we want to do like a tail coming off of this, now I'm just using the tip of the marker like that to get that shape, right? Now these are not necessarily from any particular font or anything like that. They're just stuff that I'm using the kind of strokes that we'd use for those types of fonts to create a personal font, let's say. But I'm more influenced by fonts than using specific fonts myself. I did learn a lot of the specific fonts, but I've now kind of combined a lot of them myself and created my own kind of ways of doing it. So if we then actually, instead, let's go and, before I go on to like a full word, I'll use one of the Crayola ones. So I'll just use this blue Crayola marker as I stutter on my words here. But you can see like the Crayola marker can let you do a little more scripty stuff. You can still do some of the stuff like this with a Crayola marker. You just have to be more deliberate with your lines and worry about your pressure a little more. So if we'll do that H, let's do that H in this style. We just kind of go up, down, and up, right? Now that would be a little bit cleaner. But then we go down and up, or up and down, sorry. Right? So similar looking that to this one as we have with this one. But the versatility of this is actually pretty good too, because with this tip being the way it is, we can get very fine lines and very thin lines even whenever we're, or very thick lines and very thin lines, sorry, even when we're in motion. So if we do something more scripty, sorry, let's do a scripted H or a handwritten H where we go thin. So I'm providing very little pressure going up, and then I'm providing a lot of pressure going down. So that's kind of our downstroke. Now you don't have to fade it out like that if you don't want to. You can have it go a little more smooth. You just have to be more deliberate with the line and kind of stop and then release the pen here. I have a tendency to actually swoop my strokes a little more, I guess. But then we go up, right? So now we got this kind of H as well. And again, very simple kind of look. It's the strokes and that are following the same kind of thin up, thick down, thin up, thick down as what you get with some of the Gothic lettering. But you have a little more variation and flow to it whenever you're moving. Now you can still get that kind of look too with the highlighter. I'll go back to that really quickly. But you have to get more of the twist in your wrist whenever you're doing that. So I'm actually going to use kind of the tip. We're going to go thin up, and then I'm going to twist this a little bit to get the thick down. And then I'm going to, again, and now I'm just touching just the tip, and then I'm going thicker down off of this. So again, you can still get the same kind of look and feel off of it with a different tool, but you just got to get used to the way that tool works. So where the Crayola, you don't really have to worry about the kind of rotation of it. You're worried more about kind of the angle of it, because you're going to kind of press a little more of the marker to the page and then pull it up to get the thinner lines and more down to get the thicker lines. This one's more about using the nib or tip on the tool that you have in order to get that kind of look. So that said, I'm going to show you guys how I letter a couple different words here with a couple different tools, and we'll use each one of these on a new sheet of paper here. Alright guys, so let's start this one off using the Pilot Parallel pen. This is the more professional one, and you're going to see that the ink goes down very heavy and very opaque on this. So I'm just going to start by kind of writing my name. That's going to give us a good starting point here. So as you can see, the nib needs to be cleaned. I'm getting a little bit of a kind of line variation in here that I shouldn't, but that's okay for the sake of this video. You can actually use it to build a style and things like that. Like there's a lot of guys doing calligraphy is what it's called, and they'll actually have these kind of broken kind of lines like this up at the top that actually add to that style. But in the case of this, I'm trying to do clean stuff, but my nib is just dirty, so it's going to cause a little bit of that kind of broken pattern, but that's okay. Do that like it like cuts through. All right, now we're just going to do this because I want to do like a little flourish off the end of there, and then we'll just do some of these. Yeah, so now you can see like that goes on very thick, very opaque, right? just like that, right? So, and again, you can keep like doing more stuff like this that you like, however you want to do it. It's just getting used to these strokes and stuff like that. This isn't necessarily a particular Gothic font. It's just something that's kind of inspired by that. So we're going to go ahead and take the highlighter now, and we're going to try and mimic something similar to this. We're just going to take it. It's going to be a little bit smaller because the nib's a little bit smaller. And again, the angle of the nib is slightly different, so you have to change the angle of your hand on the page. But we're going to try and spell out the same thing. Again, just pay attention to the angle in which it's in my hand. You'll see here. So you'll see there's not a lot of rotating that's going on with this one, because with the Gothic kind of lettering, it deals with a lot of purely up and down and angled strokes. So you're not really having to worry too much about pen pressure or marker pressure in this case. Just do the same little thing here that we did. So as you can see, you can mimic that style pretty well with a highlighter. You do end up with these little bits of darker spots because the ink is a little bit thinner, well, quite a bit thinner than the ink that's in the Pilot pen. So if we do something like do this, you'll see the overlap ends up having little darker areas, which is fine when you're learning and stuff like that. But if you want to do kind of a nice finished piece, unless that's the style you're going for, you might want to use something with a little more opaque ink. So now let's take the Crayola marker. And now the Crayola marker, like I showed you, you can kind of mimic some of this style by doing the thin up, thick down, and a straight kind of angled 45 or 90 degree pattern. But the Crayolas really shine whenever you're doing a little more scripty kind of fonts and typefaces and that. So we're just going to do something that's a little more scripty. We're going to do thin up and then thick down, and then we're just going to do a little flourish here at the bottom. So that's going to be the back of our K. Then we're going to do something that's, again, like a little thin to go around. Okay, so that's kind of that. And we can do this, right? So now I've angled. So that's a little bad there, but that's all right. Clean that up. So I actually angled the marker a little bit to get that extra 45 match with the 45 kind of that came down here, right? So the way that I went down like this, went straight and then over, that gave me that thinner line here, but I wanted to have that thick line come off of it. So that's why I angled the marker a little bit this way. So now we'll just continue with the Y. Thick down, thin up, then thin, thick. We'll go all the way down here. Thin, so that's a little bit of a rough one there. That's okay, we're just learning. Thin up, thick down. Then we're going to go thin up, and the E is exactly the same as the L, just smaller. So there we go, all right? So that needed to be a little bit further over. That's not a big deal. We can work on letter spacing as we're getting used to these kind of shapes and that. Even if you've been doing this for as long as I have, you will still run into little mistakes like that here and there. So we can do stuff like add the flourish off the end here. You can do like a little thin, thick over, thin, and then we'll just loop that around to get a little flourish here. So there we go. So that's how you can get that kind of look with the Crayola. But luckily too, you can also get that look with the highlighter too, even though it is that flat angled kind of nib or tip. The Pilot pen, you can also do this as well, but I'm going to show you with the highlighter, since this is all about doing it with simpler tools and cheaper tools. We're going to just spell the word shark. We'll change it up so that we're not using K's anymore. I'll get a letter that maybe has like a little more round to it. So shark seems like a cool letter. But if you want to get like more of this kind of scripty look, let's try and do that with this as well. So I'm going to use the tip of the Sharpie here to go thin going up. Then I'm going to kind of rotate a little bit to get the nib to sit more flat on the page, or the tip to sit more flat on the page. Pull it down to get that thick line, and then rotate back to the tip. So it's a very thin, like a very kind of small motion like this. Okay, so you're gonna see, I'm gonna go onto the tip, thin, flatten it out, thick, and then thin coming back up, right? So you'd want to do this a little bit faster. That'll help it be a little smoother in that as well. But then we're going thin here, so we're going to go thin up. We're going to rotate, get the thing to be more flat on the page, thick down, and we can just do a little finish off on that letter there. So that's the back of the H. We'll go thin up, thick down, and we're going to get that nice creaky sound. Now we're going to go with the A. Yeah, A here. Okay, I'm just going to leave this part of the A till at the end. So now we're going to do like a scripty kind of R, where we go thin up, a little loop. Again, and each of your letters is always going to kind of bleed into the next one. So if I'm talking about the A here, we're going to go thin to thick, and then back to thin. But that's overlapped that H there so that it looks like we drew this all in one fluid motion. So now we're going to go off the R, thin up, down, and then I like doing my K's with this like this, flat to a little bit of the curve, and then this. Now you can do your K's however you want. You can do any of the letters however you want, to be entirely honest. It's not a set kind of form. You're just kind of getting used to the way this shapes and forms work with the tool that you're using. So if we do want to do kind of that little flourish that we did here, again, that can be done with this kind of tool as well. You're going to go thin to thick, then you're going to go up onto the tip, and then you're going to come back down on the edge of it. And I'm going to do one more, and then just a little twist. So again, you're going to see like I had to twist and push it into the page, then twist it back to get just to the tip, then twist it back down, and then we just went right on the tip to create that little ball on the end of the flourish there. So if you do want to use this though still to get the more Gothic-y kind of font, we'll do that with the S in that as well. Let's try that. We'll just do shark again as well. So we're going to use more straight edges. And you have to get used to the nice creaky sounds that these markers making, but it's all right. Okay, so that's like a nice general S shape that's more of a Gothic kind of shape. We can add our edges to it there. And I'm going to do this one actually all in capitals. Create kind of like a little logo kind of thing for it. All right, and then now I'm actually going to blend two types of fonts. So this is more of a Gothic kind of font, and then I'm going to do more of like a kind of free form kind of thing for the A to create a kind of fin kind of shape. And I'll do like that. But then you're going to see this bottom of where the H is where I'm going to kind of keep the R going. And I'm going to do just this. And I'll do this for the K. And I'll do a little loop here. And I would pull it down a little, but I'm going to bleed into that. So you could pull that down to go over and that would be okay. But again, this creates kind of like a logo kind of type. And you'll see I don't do any like lines or anything like that for me to work with. I'm just working with the lines from the other letters. So from the edge of the S goes into the H, pulls into where the R, and the end, like kind of the bottom of the K here. That kind of creates this nice arc. We get that kind of logo kind of look now that we've got here. And then we can use this A as kind of like a shark fin or something like that if it was a logo. Put a little like TM or whatever in the corner to kind of finish it off. But yeah, so that's it. That's just some different ways of doing some different kind of type styles. Again, these are much more free form than something that a teacher would teach you, I would say. They're going to be more strict on it being accurate to a Gothic black letter font or a like Edwardian script font or something like a Celtic uncial font, which like Celtic would be more like this, and you can use this kind of angle as well. So you can go like a C be more like that, right? So you're using these kinds of shapes. The E's and that always follow this, right? And then the L's. And like a T. Now these aren't exactly Celtic, but something like that, roughly, right? The T's and the I's and the L, those ones in particular are not exactly a Celtic kind of style, but it's something that still gives that kind of feel that you would be looking for if that was the kind of lettering you were trying to emulate. Again, look at and study some of the forms. You don't have to stick to anything in particular. It's all about your own personal style in that when you're learning in particular. If you want to get deep into it of figuring out the forms of other letters and letter forms, go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. You can create your own kind of shapes off of that as well. And that's kind of how I do my stuff. It's much more free form, the way that I write my stuff. So anyways, I hope you guys did like this. If you want to see more stuff like this in the future, give me a like and subscribe and let me know in the comments. Make sure you hit that bell as well so you get notified whenever I do put up a new video. But this was the second one that was much more tutorial-like. So if you guys like this kind of tutorial format too, let me know and I can keep doing this kind of stuff as well. My other stuff has been more like time-lapse kind of stuff, so it's not things that I'm explaining along the way necessarily. So anyways, I hope you guys like this. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.